Jeenyus Corner Live. This is a war, people. Jeenyus Corner Live with your host, Marshall Culpepper. www.jeenyuscorner.com.
Good evening, everybody. I am your host, Marshall the Jeenyus, broadcasting live from Honey Pass, South Carolina. I'm going to be the show's going to be a good bit different tonight. I'm not going to do any headlines. There's probably not going to be that much music played, but I do want to go ahead and bring my guest on to now. My guest is a very brave woman who is finally ready to stand up and expose the Romney family crime syndicate for what they are, which is a bunch of horrible, evil people. All righty, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I am so glad that you could join me. We need to get this message out to people.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Well, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. My name is Debbie Skousen. I am from Michigan. And back in 1997, people became very familiar with me. I was part of a very high-profile court case that wound up on Court TV and Dateline 2020, and it was a parental rights case. And I did a lot of talk show circuits on parents' rights, and I don't mind representing parents. It's fine. Our society goes a little sideways every once in a while, but one of the things I really couldn't get out when I was doing the talk show circuit is I never should have been brought up on charges in the first place. They were charges that were brought falsely, and they were brought to discredit me because of information I had known about for some time involving some wrongdoing in Michigan, and particular in the Mormon Church, as well as with the Romney family.
All right, and just to let everybody know, I've been emailing with her back and forth over the past 2 days. We talked for over an hour on the phone earlier today, and people, you need to understand that this goes way deeper than you could imagine. There is no way that this can be misconstrued as a decent person having done one or two wrong things, or one or two bad things. This is, through the next 2 hours, you're going to hear stuff that is going to educate you and let you know just how depraved and how power-hungry and power-abusing the Romney family is. But why don't we go ahead and start how you met the Romneys, how you got involved with them to begin with?
Oh, I've known Scott Romney for quite a few years, since I'd say the 1970s. Scott had represented us on some housing issues in the 70s, and we knew each other, through the Mormon Church. My former mother-in-law was very active in the Republican Party in Michigan. She was very active in Stop ERA and was close to Elaine Donnelly, as well as Phyllis Schlafly from Eagle Forum. And Rona was Scott Romney's wife, was obviously at the time very active in Michigan politics. And my mother-in-law and Rona were a bit of political rivals. At the time, they were kind of vying for some of the same positions within the Republican Party here in Michigan. I sort of stayed clear from my mother-in-law's activities. She was always pretty abusive, and I tended to like a little bit more peace in my family and the things that she, stirred up. But so I've known him. I've known, had contact with the Romney family for a long time. I got to know Scott a great deal better in the next few decades when my ex-husband got intertwined in some international business deals. And I was very often taking business deals and proposals and to Scott's office, his law office, and having them reviewed and going back and talking to my husband. So I got to know them much better, during this time frame than I did, in the early 70s.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I've known it. Scott is Mitt Romney's older brother. I became very concerned about some of the international business deals. Some of them were violations of export controls, running around embargoes, and I don't want to get real specific about it, but that's what they were involved in, and it involved countless millions of dollars were involved, and it was at that point that my children and I started to be very badly abused. I had one child assaulted I've had actually two, but I had one in the early 80s assaulted, and it was a horrible trial. The Skousen family was not supportive. They were very mobbing and negative about it.
And you're talking about your ex-husband's parents.
Family, my ex-husband's family, the grandparents, aunts, the uncles. They were very abusive about the whole situation and most difficult. I was shocked. I grew up in a mixed religion family. My dad's family came from a long-term Southern Christian family where some of his family had been very beloved Christian ministers down in Tennessee. And my mom's family was Mormon, but in my early years, my dad really didn't approve of the Mormon church, so we didn't have a lot of contact. And I was just dismayed to see what Mormon families permit as far as allowing their family members to go through extreme abuse. It boggled my mind. I had my kids' grandfather, my dad, been alive, he would have definitely put a stop to it, but that wasn't the case. He had already passed away. But
okay, and when we say abuse right now, we're just in general talking about physical violence, emotional abuse.
No, there was
like
sexual abuse. No, there was sexual abuse. Yeah, there was sexual abuse, and the Skousen family was very, very vile about it to the victims. Very vile to the victims about it, not supportive. So that's like I said, the abuse started right on the heels of where these guys were doing the export control violations. And my personal view is those assaults had a lot to do with what was going on. There was, like I said, it was millions of dollars that they were involved in. We went through quite a few years of being quite harassed and a lot of family pain going on, that's for sure. And then in 1997, I had these false charges brought up on me that, landed me right in the middle of a very high-profile court case. As we talked on the phone, I told you that this was it's been a very painful family experience to go through. It's also been a very more than painful political and scary political thing to face, knowing that you're up against a crime syndicate. Mr. Gilbert is correct in calling it a crime syndicate. It is what it is. I'm going to try to be a little bit careful about who is involved in some of these export controls, but there was a number of foreign powers and a number of foreign countries, some of them being communist countries, involved in it. And so it got very convoluted, very, very quickly.
Yeah. So what you're saying basically is countries that weren't necessarily friendly to America and the interest of the American people.
Absolutely. And they were running, like I said, they were running embargoes. And absolutely they were not, I would say they were not friends with America. That's what I would say. And maybe they picked up that I wasn't going along with this agenda. I talked to my ex-husband several times about getting out of it and getting away. It just reeked, the whole thing always reeked of what they were involved in. Yeah. But in 1997, I was set up on false charges. The charges were brought by a school counselor from Brighton High School by the name of Mr. Jacuri, and he had made some false statements to the police. He also made some false statements about me. He had tried to portray me as a crazy lady, deranged, and it took me a few years of digging around about how he was connected and who was connected with them, and because I'd only had two contacts with Mr. Jacuri. One was when my teenage daughter was getting a little rebellious, and she had a boyfriend that was a pretty bad influence, and she had been an honor student, and I was very pleased at her progress because she had a reading disability, and she was one of the few children challenged at a reading disability that were able to overcome it and become honor students. So I felt her progress was going well, and I felt, she was, going to do okay in life. And then her grades started to tank. And as any parent, you're worried. And I tried to curtail her from the boyfriend. That didn't work. And she was slapped twice with an open hand, no bruise, no injury, no red mark after she stayed out a weekend. But Mr. Jacuri claimed that there was bruising and an injury, which was false. He claimed I was somewhat deranged, which wasn't true. And my only other conversation I had with Mr. Jacuri was a few months earlier when I went in to talk to him and asked him to please watch the kids, my children at school. I went to each of the schools that my children, because I'd been getting some threats from people who were associated with my ex-husband in some of his business dealings. And I mentioned to Mr. Jacuri that my ex-husband had a very strong connection with some very high-level former Soviets, and I was very worried about these connections and the threats I was getting. And that was pretty much the sum total of our conversation. But what I learned later on is that Mr. Jacuri attended the same Methodist church that Mike Rogers from Brighton, Michigan, attended, as well as Susan Geddes, who was a prosecutor who prosecuted me and took a false police report in doing so, as well as Susan's husband, William McCurry, who was also a prosecutor, and William, of course, showed up in the courtroom at certain times during the prosecution, during my case. And again, it took me years to find out that all of these people were, attended the same church and friends. Mike Rogers, at the time, was serving in the Michigan State Legislature. He is now the head of the Permanent Committee on Congressional Intelligence, the Intelligence Committee for Congress.
I was saying that on the White House, on the government page, the Intelligence Congressional page. So, I'm going to go ahead and point out that people real quick, you have to understand that this is a very complicated web that has been intertwined, and the best way to follow it is through the money and the social religious associations. It stems around that, but it is a large organized network that Mitt Romney sits on top of.
Yeah, they have. One of the fellows that was involved in this these export violations was brought over from the Soviet Union, and he wound up on Bush's inauguration committee in 2000, and he also was on the Republican Congressional Committee. So these people have gotten in as far as they've gotten into Republican politics pretty deeply, and I would venture to say the Romneys opened the door to them, because they were involved in a lot of Oakland County Republican Party politics. What I did do, and my son did today, is we added some things to my blog, and I do have a blog out there, and I kind of suggest people go look at it, because we'll get more background. But the name of the blog is The Real Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate. And I put in some documents on some of the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight, because I didn't want anyone coming back and threatening me with a slander suit. I'm not going to tell a lie about anybody. I know that some people have some pretty serious things that they certainly want to cover up, but I'm pretty tired of my kids and I being, our lives being destroyed and covering up for these people. I will mention that the state trooper that wrote up the falsified police report, his name was Paul Rambo, and he was also a very close personal friend of Congressman Dick Chrysler, who served one term in the Congress, and the Rogers family and Chryslers and McCurrys and Geddeses are all, it's a small town, a very small town, and they're all really tight friends and political allies. So, I knew I was being set up when everything was coming down, and so for me it was a very scary situation. I was glad to see the national media coming in and looking at the case, because I felt it offered me a little bit more protection than I would have had they not been there. But I was found innocent of the charges, and then as soon as I was through the court case in December of 1997, by the end of January, I was in foreclosure with all the utilities being shut off and no food to feed my kids. And my ex-husband had bought a condominium some months ago and didn't tell me, prior to the trial, and didn't tell me that he had done that. And he made quite a few false claims about me, but certainly didn't let the public know that,
basically, it was. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you were going to say something. I didn't want to interrupt.
Basically, based on your husband's actions, it was almost as if it was a premeditated thing.
Oh, I would say
to intentionally wreck everything in your life.
Oh, yeah, I would say it was very definitely premeditated. Like I said, when the charges came, I knew I was being set up. And there's some meetings and things that went on that I haven't fully spoken about yet. But, yeah, I knew it was a setup. I just didn't know that he had, purchased another place to live several months before the trial. I didn't know that he had hidden over $100,000 over to his mother's house with the help of his siblings. And there's a number of things that I didn't know that he had done prior. But that all being painful, another painful incident happened, which does involve the Romney family. And as Mr. Gilbert has spoken out very strongly in his videos about calling Mitt a crime syndicate or a criminal syndicate, they certainly have been involved in, abusive actions towards people.
Yeah.
On my, I'm trying to get the story together because it starts getting painful to even try to explain to the public. This is something that can happen to anyone that his group of people perceive as a threat. All you have to do is just know something, or maybe be in their way. But I did put some documents out. So if you could kind of help me through this part is still very difficult for me. I wound up getting stuck in Brighton for 14 years after the initial divorce proceedings started, and I wasn't quite sure why I was stuck there. I had another child that went through an assault without my knowledge. It occurred over at their dad's house. And it had started when it was after the trial, and the community was really rough. I don't want to understate how difficult the Brighton community was on my kids and I as we stayed there. The community newspaper was consistently printing false stories. They were traumatizing my kids because the kids were getting roughed up in the community, and they were reading these negative things in the community newspaper. The Brighton school system and the high school, they used their high school newsletter and printed negative comments about me where one of my kids attended. And so, of course, my one son that was attending the high school was chased out. And that was all done with the county's permission to print that in. And the Brighton school system has a history of using student body newsletters for political reasons to degrade somebody that they feel needs to be. And that's not what a student newspaper should be about, but it is misused. It is misused.
That's right there. That's right there. Just clear evidence that members of this crime syndicate are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their objectives. Morals be damned. Human lives be damned. They're going to do what they want. If they want it, they're going to take it, basically.
They're going to. And Brighton's a very close community. It's very tightly controlled by the Rogers family. There's a saying that one of the political insiders told me about the community. They said nothing happens without the Rogers family approval. But it's a very, very tightly controlled community by those individuals that are highly political. One of my underage children who had just left elementary school at the time started without my knowledge. They'd gone from from elementary to middle school, started receiving gifts coming in from the school to the school office. And again, without my knowledge or permission, the school started sending in the gifts into their classroom.
Yeah.
And the gifts were coming from an adult from outside the school system. and it took me a while to kind of figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And when I did, I tried to put a stop to it. One of the attorneys involved in our court case, he was working with the school system, and this individual is involved in this particular issue going on. He was trying to use the school to arrange visitation, which was inappropriate of him to do so, but that's what he was doing. And at the same time, this other county-linked individual was sending these gifts in to the school, which was being delivered. And I tried to put the end to the fellow who was delivering the gifts, and in October of 99, and we're talking a few years. Like I said, this has gone on for a long time.
It's a decades-long thing.
Yeah, and even with the Romneys, and this stuff with the embargoes, this stuff happened before. This took place before the fall of Russia. So these things have gone on in our family for decades, and the abuse has gone on for decades. But the guardian ad litem wound up switching custody on me on a weekend, a handwritten note, and I never saw my daughter again, and I'd actually had a missing persons report out. I had no idea what happened to them. And later on, I found out that there had been an issue over at her dad's house. And I had received, I went through one night where I started receiving phone calls at midnight till about 5 in the morning, and they were coming in every 10 minutes, and it was somebody calling and boasting about hurting my child. And they were very vulgar, and they were boasting about it, and I called over at my ex's house and asked if our child was okay. He assured me that they were, but he failed to tell me that any incident had happened earlier. And like I said, later on I did learn something did happen. And I also learned that part of the cover-up and the deals that were made among these community people is that if they covered these issues up, I was supposed to lose all marital assets. So we're going to fast forward. We're going to go forward a couple of years, quite a few, and I'm looking at Mitt Romney because I do my blog, and I'm seeing he's giving a talk at Farmington Hills, and lo and behold, in its backdrop is the name of the relatives of the individual I had to put a PPO out on. And I was pretty upset about it, and I emailed Scott, and so I'm going to refer people to my blog because my son and I worked today. We decided not to put voices in, so we very quickly redid things. So people can go to my blog, and they can look at these documents, and I have the PPO up. I have the letter to Scott Romney saying, hey, what's going on here? Because I'm wondering, who on earth got the money from these people and why they're supporters of Mitt Romney. And I'm wondering why Mitt Romney is standing in front of these people's name and a banner in the backdrop. I wonder if they're doing it to mock this horrible situation, kind of like how they sent Newt Gingrich a cake on an anniversary that some ethics violations were given. I don't know if this is like a ha-ha, we got you, Debbie, sort of thing with them. I do know that Scott did laugh several years earlier over some assault that did occur in our family, and I thought he was very vile to do so. So I don't know if this is like, one of their Romney, we got you sort of things going on. So I have a copy.
Taunting.
Yeah.
Basically, taunting and tormenting their victims.
Exactly. So I have the email to Scott, and I told him I was going to release it at one time. He's not unaware of it. After Scott got the email, which Mr. Skousen got a copy of, my ex-husband attends the same Mormon church ward that several of Scott Romney's children attend. They're adult children with their own kids. And so we noticed that after my complaining about all this cover-up and the abuse and stealing of marital assets, which Scott is completely aware of, that my ex-husband was called to be an Institute of Religion teacher for the Mormon Church. And in that he teaches a class to college students at the various universities here in Michigan. And if they want to take a religious course, they get BYU credit for it. And it was like a slap in the face. It was like they were rewarding him for being abusive to us. And at that point, my son decided to go do a protest outside of the Northville Church Ward, which we also have on the blog, because it was getting to the point it was enough. And so, like I said, I'll refer people to the website because I do have that up.
I want to jump in real quick. I just want to jump in real quick and let everybody know that in the show description, there's two sections of links I posted. The top one is the suggested links, and I have 3 websites that Debbie recommended to me, including the main one she's talking about, the Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate. So if y'all want to follow along as she goes through this, the links are in the show description. Please go and get as much of this information as you can, people. All right, go ahead. I just wanted to let them know that was there.
I found them to be, I came from a Southern background. You didn't abuse people, and you didn't allow your family to. That never would have been done by my dad. Now I do have some family members that are certainly involved in allowing the abuse to happen to my kids and I'm very disappointed in them. And I know it's something that my dad had he been alive, the grandfather of, his kids, I know that he would have been pretty upset with them for their involvement. But so it is a tragic family situation, as well as, us being hit with this horrific political corruption going on. And people need to be warned that the Romneys are not these good people that they try to proclaim themselves to be. The Mormon Church in Michigan, just a side note, has covered up child sexual abuse for quite a few decades within the Bloomfield Hills stake and surrounding stakes. That was another thing. After my first child was assaulted, I started to research, and I came across other cases that had, been covered up, or people were told not to report to the police, or, they were spun around like a top, and were certainly put in a difficult situation as they, had their loyalty to the Mormon Church, and in a state of conflict with what was actually, happening within their family. Unfortunately, the loyalty to the church often went out versus the protection of their family. So there is a good book I can suggest somebody to read if they're interested in that particular side of the Mormon Church here in Michigan, covering up childhood sexual assault, as well as on women. There have been women assaulted that they've covered up, but it's a book called The Sins of Brother Curtis by Lisa Davis. And it's about a case of a Seattle attorney that took on a case in Seattle, and as he investigated it, it linked right back to Michigan. Curtis had also been in Michigan molesting children. And anybody who's my Facebook friend can go in and you'll find the attorney involved is one of my Facebook friends, and you can click into his site and get the information on that. He does handle clergy abuse and and suing both the Mormon and the Catholic Church for the cover-up abuse of children.
Yeah.
So,
and just to put it into context for people, we're not. I'm certainly not, and I know Debbie isn't. We're not trying to necessarily say something bad about anybody who happens to be a Mormon. We're talking about a specific group that is basically membership of an organized crime syndicate that reaches worldwide, pretty much. Like you said, they during the embargo years, they ran the embargoes, which basically is my whole theory on government. Prohibition of stuff never works. All it does is set up a monopoly for someone, and it's usually the people in power who keep the embargoes in place.
Well, the people involved in this, when they were running going around the sanctions, I doubt if more than, here in the States, I doubt if there was more than 5, 6, 7 people that knew that this was going on. I don't think it was something, that our U.S. government was involved in. I from my ground floor experience, this was something that the Romneys and my ex-husband and 2 or 3 other people in the States were involved in, and, stood to make a great deal of money off of. So I don't feel that this had any, link back to the State Department or, any other government agency. It was just purely a deal that wound up in the lap over here, and it was very lucrative. Now, as far as the people connected in other countries, there certainly were, people in the other countries that were involved in what the shipments were. Some of them were military, did have military links, but they were links in other countries, not here in the U.S.
I know you stated on the blog, you talked about the situations dealing with China and situations dealing with potentially KGB and Soviets, basically. What we're basically saying is it was people dealing with unfriendly countries.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And there was the business deals did involve the Soviet Union. It was before the fall. And there are also some business deals that were involving China, and this was before China opened up to the West. So we were actually involved in both very deeply in both of the communist countries, and they were dealing very high up in the governments of those particular countries. But again, this was not something I feel that the American government was involved in. It was just happenstance that these business deals came in through with my ex-husband, and Scott the Romneys were handling it, and they stood to profit a great deal of money off of it. So I'm not saying later on maybe somebody got involved, but I don't believe initially that was the case. Okay.
I just want to highlight this out for people, though, real quick. You have to understand that what we're facing now with a potential Mitt Romney nomination is the people who are doing this, his business associates. We saw what Obama did when he got elected. We see what every president does. It's what I would do if I got president. If I got elected president, I would appoint people to cabinet positions and stuff like that I knew and had long-term relationships with. And with that said, you have to look at who Mitt Romney's long-term relationships are with. I know we said in our phone conversation, Mitt and Scott, even though the public doesn't really get that much of a perception of it, are basically joined at the hip, even more so financially.
Yeah, well, yeah. Scott is on the board of Solomire, and Tag Romney is the president, and that's your personal Romney family finance company. And it's closed to the public. They have, I don't know who their friends are, but it states on their page that only, certain friends are allowed in it. I think if you, do any research on Scott and Mitt, they're very close. Scott even appointed Ann and Mitt Romney as the trustees over his children's Goldman Sachs trust funds.
Yeah.
And they're very close. Scott tends to like to stay in the background. He doesn't like a lot of public attention. I guess sometimes flying under the radar, maybe you can do more things than if people know that you're out there. But Scott does hold the position of the head of Mitt Romney's National Finance Committee, and he co-chairs that with John Ricola, who is also a Romney in-law. Ricolas and Romneys go back a long ways. Scott Romney's first wife, Rona Romney, her sister is married to John Ricola. And the Romneys and Ricolas stayed very friendly even after the divorce of Scott and Rona. But John Ricola and Scott Romney do co-chair Mitt Romney's national financial heads. And John Ricola's wrapped up in some Detroit corruption probe on pay-to-play, and I have that on my blog. Questions about Wayne County Jail and Sweetheart Jails and some other corruption going on within Michigan. That has not hit national press at all. We've only had a couple of reporters here in Michigan even reporting on that link into the Romney campaign.
All right. And while we're on the subject of campaign finance, do you want to bring up that one? I would say, I personally, because I know that people have different lifestyles, and some people might have different views on sexuality. But do you want to get into some of the businesses, I guess you could say, that have contributed to Romney campaigns?
Well, I know that Goldman Sachs has contributed. But you could bring up some names and we could talk about it. What happened to my family is so personal. It's been so devastating. My whole probe has been trying to put together this network that beset my family. I wanted to understand why I was getting mobbed in the court. I wanted to know why when I went to the court, and I go into the court by myself when I go into Livingston County. I want to know why the sheriff department was sending all of the sheriffs that would absolutely mob me to the point that they'd encircle me in the hallways and being very intimidating. I'm just a woman by myself in there, and yet they were doing some pretty strong acts of intimidation, and I always ask myself why. And so I tend to have an investigative nose, and I start probing and, trying to find out what's going on. I probably haven't done a lot on who's specifically contributing to him. I may know something about them just through, things that I've run into. So why don't you give me a few names, and I'll tell you if I know something or not.
Well, I was thinking you had spoke earlier about an adult type merchandise place. I'm a little uncomfortable with the words, but basically,
I have that on, and that was Polson's audio and toys for grown-ups and not adults. When we were talking, I was mistaken. It was toys for grown-ups, and I think their business has to do with TVs and audio equipment. I've never been in their store. I don't know what else. I was insulted reading that and having Mitt standing in front of that, knowing what happened to my family.
Yeah.
Okay. My family's not a toy for any adult or any grown-up or anything. They should have been children who should have been allowed to have a life. I've had kids who, because of the trauma, they weren't able to go to football games or go to their senior prom or their Winterfest or do the things that other kids could do. They were facing having mom have her tires sliced, having as I told you, I had the oil drained from my engine of my car, and my engine seized, and we were without transportation for a while, and my home was broken into. We had threatening calls. I mean, that's what some of my kids knew about for some of their very formative years. They didn't know about fun high school stuff. They weren't seeing that.
That it's horrible to take. It's horrible for someone to take that from a child. And I know a lot of people, and I'm not trying to belittle what has happened to other people across the country based on the greed and corruption of the Romneys with stuff like Vane Capital and the corporate rating and all that. But to think that he can do that to thousands and upon hundreds of thousands of people nationwide over decades, and all the while he's part of this network that is literally terrorizing people, terrorizing innocent families.
Mm-hmm.
It's tragic.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gilbert probably was struck very true when he said it was a crime syndicate. And these people are certainly behaving like thugs, and I don't appreciate, what happened to my family. It's not, I loved all of my children. They were great little kids, and it really hurt to see, what happened to them. Their paths in life haven't gone the way, I dreamed about when they were small and I was raising them. But it's certainly something that voters need to be aware of. I think it's something the GOP needs to be aware of. He is one of their candidates. I feel that the corruption that he's involved in, the GOP needs to confront him. The other thing that I'll mention, it was something my son and I spoke about. I'm only going to say this in passing. They also were doing some international espionage. They were passing some trade secrets to some foreign countries. And my ex-husband had formed several businesses, and these trade secrets, what it did is it gave his business partners some bargaining positions and also some insider information on how to handle their deals. Sometimes executives from the businesses were involved itself and in passing this stuff. So I don't want any listener to think that this was anything minor. This was pretty major things that they were involved in.
Yeah, just alone, just the personal abuse that has occurred is monstrous. But people do not think that there's any type of remorse in that man. We're talking about the same man.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely, yeah. They have none, absolutely none. I know that I subpoenaed Scott during one of the court things. If somebody goes through my YouTubes, I did get pretty feisty with him. I was really tired of being abused. I was tired of seeing my kids being abused. I was fed up at the corruption. And I did sneak a tape recorder in several times into the court hearings because the court would go in and they'd alter court record. And I was fed up with it because they were so blatant in things that they did. And I challenged them on some of their corruption. And you'll see that in some of the YouTubes that I did bring up and I did bring out on my blog. So I have a new section up that I put up just before your program started. Right, and people can go through that and you can see what's going on in the county.
And that's still the main one we were talking about, the Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate?
Yeah. Yeah, and I
just want to remind everybody. I just want to remind everybody once again, the links are in the show description for the main website, the Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate, and two others that, as I read through them over the past couple of days, there's one, Mitt Romney's Torture Series, and it lets you know, reading some of that material lets you know the sadistic pleasure that this crime syndicate gets from victimizing people. It's not for them, it's not just about the intimidation and scaring people into being quiet, they also get off on it.
Yeah, that's how I've interpreted what's happened with them. I know when I subpoenaed Scott, I got and the subpoena hit his office. I got quite a few phone calls in one day and several emails in one day from him, and we conversed back and forth about him showing up in court and why I was subpoenaing him. And, of course, he never showed up. I didn't expect him to. He had to go on vacation up in Canada and couldn't come into court. And the judge, of course, allowed that and wasn't going to reschedule, a time that he could be there. But I know in my conversations with Scott, he said, well, Debbie, when you're subpoenaing somebody, you have to submit to them. When you call them on the witness stand, you have to give them ahead of time all the questions you're going to ask them. So I want you to send to me each question you're going to ask me on the witness stand. And I don't know what type of lunatic he thinks I am, but I know better than that. And, of course, I never did send him the list of questions I had for him. But, I have my perception is yes, they do think it's funny. And no matter how brutal the infliction of harm that they do. My ex-husband has shown up and literally laughed about some of the abuse that's gone on. He thought it quite funny.
Yeah, and people, just so you know, that's somebody we're talking, associated with the Romney Crime Syndicate, who is laughing at the abuse of his own children that happened at the hands of this said crime syndicate.
Yeah. Aaron and I decided not to state it because it's so personal, but I did mention to you what he happened to write into court, which fell into my hands in a legal way, where he is just literally, I'm not even sure the word to use it, but he could certainly care less about any of the violence that happened to any of the children.
Yeah, he's basically just being a monster.
Well, when he got very deeply involved with these Russian people, and they were very high level. And we're talking high level. Some of them were former KGB individuals. Yeah. And I know one evening he came home, because our house got to be very mentally abusive with him. He had come home and he was boasting at one time that he was getting training in subliminal mind control. And
we're talking like MK Ultra type stuff.
I don't know, and I don't know what reference he was talking about, but he was certainly very mentally abusive. I want to make things really clear to people so they don't get confused, okay? My dad was a Southern guy, came from a Christian family. He did not mince with anyone abusing his family. And anyone that he ever would have thought was doing so, I'm sure they would have felt his wrath. And as you're from the South, you know what I'm talking about. He wouldn't have put up with it.
I'm upstate South Carolina. I know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah, and he was from Tennessee. My early ancestors actually settled South Carolina in the early 1750s, originally from Virginia and then into South Carolina, and they fought the Revolutionary War in South Carolina. And then, maybe 25, 30 years later, a couple of the, descendants, which I'm one of, they went and they were the very early settlers into Tennessee. And then they were, of course, fought for the Confederacy. And, I come from an old Southern branch, and my dad would never have allowed anything like that to enter our family. So I really want to make real clear, because I don't want people misthinking anything. He would be more than furious to learn that his grandchildren were abused in any way.
I want to ask, just so people can understand, now, basically, Scott Romney was aware of these things that happened. You and him had actually exchanged emails and had verbal conversations.
Oh, Yes, absolutely. I've chewed him out about the cover-ups. I've chewed him about in emails. Absolutely, totally aware. Yeah, totally aware.
Right. Now, what do you think the chances are or likelihood of Mitt himself actually knowing of these things?
Well, I think it would be pretty tough for Mitt not to know.
Them being joined at the hip and all. But, I try.
Oh, come on. He's got David Fisher selling my house. His sister, his head Michigan bundler, his sister, David Fisher's sister-in-law is selling my house. My one attorney that threw me under the bus just happened to be working with David French, the head of evangelicals for Mitt. Come on, there's no way in the world somebody could tell me that Mitt himself wasn't aware of some of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. When you have that many people in your inner circle directly involved with I hate to call it an inner circle. Regular politicians have inner circles. Now, I have some Newt Gingrich listeners Newt Gingrich supporters listening to my show usually, and I listen to theirs too. And we're trying to come eye to eye. We have things we disagree on, but someone like Ron Paul or Newt Gingrich or Rick Santorum or Michelle Bachmann or even on the Democrat side, you have large groups around you. It's required to do a job such as big as being a public official. But Romney does not have a circle of advisors. He has a circle of thugs. He has a circle of mob-like captains that run a criminal squad.
And he keeps the circle very close. I think if you do any reading about him, his inner circle is really only made up of a few people. So I would highly doubt that Mitt himself doesn't know. And besides, I've made far too much noise in a lot of arenas for him not to be aware of it. But yes, Scott and I have exchanged emails. We had talked several times on the phone a few years. We're talking like 2 or 3 years ago, when I subpoenaed him, and I have the documentation of our email exchange and our phone call conversations then, and if you look on it, you'll see that the Romneys are very tight in Livingston County. I'm not sure exactly all their connection, but they're very, very tight in Brighton. Their father's buried there, and their mother's buried there. And it's not a big community. It's not like Detroit. It's a small community outside of Detroit where Brighton is at in Livingston County.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that. I'm sure the Romney family has talked about it among themselves from time to time.
Especially with the vicious nature, the way they seem, like I said, to enjoy it and really savor causing hurt and pain to people. I'm sure if Scott's involved, I'm sure that's something he bragged to his brother about at dinner once or twice.
Like I said, I'd have to go on what my impression is, and my impression is that they did get a kick out of it. Scott laughed about something on the phone with me a few years ago, and I tracked something down, and I spoke to him on the phone, and I questioned about it, and he laughed. He goes, huh? Laughed. He says, oh, you found out about that. And so maybe they just think they're clever, and they think, I can't read their thoughts, but I just know that our viewpoints are very different. That's not how I believe that people should treat other people, and I find that type of treatment, the type of treatment we've gone through, as being satanic, and certainly nothing the way human beings should interact with each other.
That's definitely my thoughts exactly. And people don't understand this. I know we talk, and we don't really want to get into any of the stuff that could be conspiracies, or even, I hate when they attach the word theory to it, because by that they can just negate anything that anybody says. But I don't want to really get into all that. But we have to understand that it's not just Mitt Romney and the Romneys. It's other people that are associated with business partners, other crime families that have, underground agreements. And these people, they are evil in their heart. They are evil in their heart. And like you said, with all the stuff going on with the communist countries, a couple of decades ago, and we see where our country is at now, to where we're on the brink of economic collapse and basically socialism. And Mitt Romney's been one of the biggest proponents of a social health care type system. I mean, he passed it in Massachusetts.
Even Israel has a universal health care, and other countries do too. We're kind of trying to wade through to read what was put in. I'm not so sure America's giving the American people a good health care system, a good health care program on it. But as far as your communism, the communist countries very often do not take care of their people well, and often just exploit them. So, I think you have to look at the dynamics. But what I do know what these people were involved in is they were involved in making a lot of money. And you do have criminal elements that certainly came out of the Soviet Union after the fall. And I think those are the things that you need to look at, and Americans need to be careful about. There's more than one way to take down America, and that's by having Americans turn on each other and be selfish with each other. And I was talking to some of my older relatives down south, and they recounted a time where neighbors took care of each other when they were in need, and we're not so much that way anymore. If somebody was sick, people would go in, take care of them, bring them food, whatever. Barn burnt down, they'd help them build a barn. We're not so much that society anymore.
Yeah.
So, I think we. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's more of, and it's basically you have. And I don't like to use a lot of the cliche terms that mainstream media uses, Occupy Wall Street and the 99% versus the 1%. But that's almost really, that really is what it is. It's a small, tight-knit group of people who honestly believe that everybody else is less than them.
Yep.
And should bow down to their will.
Mm-hmm. And they feel that they deserve most of the wealth and resources, and everybody else can go live out in the street. And they're, what did they do to us? They abused us for whatever it was that they were involved in. And like I said, the embargo busting that they were doing was certainly into millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that were involved in that. So I'm sure that was something they certainly didn't want anybody knowing, and if it took roughing somebody up, so be it.
Yeah.
That was going to be the way it was.
I think this is a good time to point out, we need to ask ourselves, why won't Mitt release his tax records? I
think he should.
I think you should too. I like what Dr. Paul said about, I don't plan on. He said he didn't plan on releasing his. It was more of because he's a humble man and he don't have that greed. So he said his thing would be being embarrassed. I agree with Dr. Paul's position on right to privacy and all that. But when somebody is running for the highest office in the land at such a pivotal time in our country, and this person, without everything we've discussed tonight, none of that, his Bain Capital, Goldman Sachs, all those things should be enough red flags to know that Mitt Romney is not going to serve the interests of our country. He is going to serve his own interests. He's going to serve his foreign interests that, as we've discussed, he's been doing business with for decades. And those foreign interests aren't necessarily friendly at all.
No, I don't. That's not been my experience. I did not find them as friendly.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty. Well, I'm trying to think. There's just so much of this to go over.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to remind everybody real quick, in the show's description there is 3 links that I posted under the suggested links to the 3 different blogs that Debbie has up. The one that's really the main one is the Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate. And this really is some eye-opening information, people. It outlines as clear as it can be outlined, I guess, because it really is just a complicated, nasty web of just filth, just corruption, abuse of power, and crimes against. We use this term a lot in today's world, but I mean, really, it's crimes against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That comes with that type of greed.
Yeah, I ran into due process violations in the court during my initial charges back in '97. They, I was charged with a lower charge, and the prosecutors threatened me that if I didn't plead guilty, that they were going to up my charges, and they did. And the charges they upped me to didn't. They just upped them, and what was done never, filled it. They never had photographs. They falsified the doctor's report. They never did any of the things, and so the courts were blatantly violating due process and laughing about it. There would be times I'd be in the courtroom, and these court individuals would be laughing about what they were doing. They thought it was a lark.
Yeah.
The American people really need to.
I was going to say, this was back more when the Romneys were more active on the state political scene, right? When the Romneys were on the state political scene, yeah, it was just, he had already tried to run for governor of Mass. He had already run against Ted Kennedy, in the early 90s. He had run during that particular time when Mitt was running against Ted Kennedy. I really went under some real extreme harassment. Mitt was trying to break into the national scene more. Yeah, and he definitely wanted to keep everything, all his dirty little secrets, up under a lid.
I'm sure the whole family was. The whole family was at that point. But yeah, it was pretty abusive in the early 90s, and again at the end of the 90s, it got very, very abusive, and into 2000, I'm not sure it really ever stopped. The intensity has changed a little bit, but we certainly did go through a lot of purgatory. Yeah. My kids did feel bad. They've had a very bad American experience for sure.
All right. Well, I was going to ask, I do have a couple of callers on the line. Would you mind if I took a call or two to get people to ask questions? Ma'am?
Sure, they can ask. Yeah, that'd be fine.
All righty. All right, caller, you are on the air on Jeenyus Corner Live.
How you doing there tonight?
I'm doing all right, sir. How you doing?
Oh, I wish I was better because of the state of affairs of the world right now. But I am going to maybe not be in agreement with you. So I hope you guys don't mind callers calling in who might have the opposite side to want to show.
As long as people are respectful, I don't try to censorship free speech. But just to be clear, this is a very serious matter that I take serious, and I know Debbie does as well. And it's also been a very emotional thing for us. All I ask is any questions or any comments, just be respectful and considerate.
Well, you could guarantee that I will be respectful, considerate, and it's meant as complete just discourse and good discussion. So, bottom line is that I voted for Barack Obama last term, and I'm not happy because I just feel that I don't feel the country, our America is not what it used to be. It just isn't. I think that it used to be the land of opportunity to come on in and be able to, thrive in certain ways. And I think that by blaming globalization, which is in essence taking jobs and finding ways to get manufacturing done, in a cheaper way, or have products or services provided in a cheaper way, is a business move. And yes, it might remove jobs, but throughout our entire career, our entire lives, I mean, look, the poor guys that operated Gutenberg printing presses, they lost their jobs. They were done. Forget it. As soon as typesetting went out of business. And a lot of this stuff, I feel, is connected to the fact that we're making progress as a country from an intellectual property standpoint, and we're operating in a different kind of a way. So I just find it hard to turn around and assassinate Mitt Romney. And again, I'm not sticking up for him either as I say this. I'm just saying I feel that running a country from a business perspective, it's fairly well known that we're going to have technology-oriented advances. And as that occurs, we need to evolve. I know it's a very narrow focus that I just mentioned. And again, very respectfully, I say this. I take it seriously too, but I don't feel like Obama's way is going to make things better moving forward at all, nearly as well as a business person's perspective would. And that's sort of it.
All right. Well, I mean, you made some valid points, and I just want to point out 2 or 3 quick things.
Okay.
Number one, do you understand what has caused our financial situation as is?
Very, very much to my knowledge, I do, and I'd be glad to very quickly tell you if you feel that you want to hear that. But yes,
cool.
I do.
Basically what it boils down to is our monetary system. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. It is not a government agency. It is independent of any government agency. And this is just basic, just laws of nature.
Of course.
The less you have of something, the rarer something is, the higher its value is going to be, the higher the demand for it. So when we have a system where our money, our funds, our fiat currency has been disattached from anything that has any real physical lasting worth,
yes.
And then you have people on both sides, because I don't try to get political, who are so willing to spend money at the government level that causes more and more money to be printed, and by that basic law of nature, the more of it is, the less there will be. Now, my problem with Mitt Romney is the same problem I have with Barack Obama, and I voted Obama too in 2008, so I'm with you on there. But Mitt Romney is beholden, because I know I kind of built the show with the information I was receiving as Mitt Romney being the crime boss of it. But to tell the truth, he's really just a small, part of my language, but pissant puppet frontman, just like Obama is. It's not a coincidence that Mitt Romney's number 1 campaign contributor is Goldman Sachs, and Barack Obama's is number 2, and neither one of them has any interest in auditing the Fed or doing anything to get Ben Bernanke out of there before he completely kills off the dollar.
Well,
now, as far as
that's
business,
very, very important, that point you just made about the dollar, because you can't devalue. We're in a massive deflationary recession, I believe, onset from providing subprime mortgages to people that just couldn't afford them so they could buy houses, creating an artificial bubble that was like the dot-com bubble, except it just took the entire country, not just a sector. And the reality is that you're correct. There's a big problem. I mean, if we look back, I think we need a guy like Paul Volcker to step in and be able to exercise some Volcker economics and start to raise interest rates to revalue the type of currency that we have while frankly performing the opposite of QE3 in the process. so we could have an appropriate cleansing quickly and get this over with already, so we could move onward and keep the value of the dollar where it should be. But it's a joke what's going on. It's like the more you print, the less it's worth, and that's the way they're going to get their way out of it. Just print more, but it's not working. There's a big problem because Helicopter Ben is not pulling us out of this, and the figures they're reporting are inaccurate regarding unemployment. Our GDP sucks compared to China and, other Asian countries. We're heading for a bad place, and I think the only way out of this is going to be to innovate out of it. It's the only way we've ever been able to ever break out of a circumstance of this as a country, and that has got to start. But I disagree with the way that you have chosen to portray Romney per se, because I feel like it's sort of baseless to do that, even if he didn't put his tax returns forth. It's like, who gives a darn? It's like and the reason, I know he's going to be the leader of the country, and we have to know the guy, we have to vet him, but it doesn't matter. His money's in different currencies. I'm sure he is engaged in asset protection all over the place because the litigious nature of our country, if you're a businessman or woman, you have to follow that, and be cautious. It's a dangerous place to grow here in America, and I think that's what Romney could rebuild potentially, and Obama has royally flunked at it, and he did not do what he said he was going to do, and I put my trust in that man. I trusted him, and I went with it, and I really wasn't sure. I voted for him because I was like, you know what? If McCain kicks the bucket, Palin's not going to be my president. Forget it, And that was how I felt, and everyone feels differently about that, and I respect your opinion and everyone else's opinion along the way with regards to that. But bottom line is, I think we need Volcker style economics right now. We have to raise rates so we could start valuing the dollar. Otherwise, we're in a downward spiral. We're going to crash and burn, and our country is just going to basically end up bankrupt. Or we're going to tax the crap out of people to the point where you can't even possibly live because you have so many taxes that you have to pay. It's going to be insane that my generation, at least, I'm in my 40s, right, my low 40s. I don't know how old you guys are, but it's like, why should we have to pay for the mess that the baby boomers frankly caused? And now I have all the money, and now I have to be taken care of. I don't know.
This is the thing that you're not really grasping, though.
What's that?
How was Mitt Romney going to do anything to reverse it? Mitt Romney, in his personal life, in his professional life, and in his political life, has had the take no prisoners, whatever it takes to gain for myself. Now, I feel your point about, yes, sometimes a company is faced with a hard financial decision, and they have to figure out how to keep their line of production up while lowering the the man-hour costs, but labor costs. But when you do it, company after company after company, while making record profits. Now, I'm all for, because I'm not a big tax guy. I want the government out of the bedroom, out of the wallet, out everything. But we as people, especially people who are going to go around parading, claiming to be a good person, claiming to be an honest and decent person, and we can consciously make a decision, hey, I want to line my pocket with $5 more million. Who cares about the 3,000 people at 3 different plants across the country who aren't going to have a Christmas this year and will be evicted by New Year's?
Well, that's a terrible thing to have happen when Americans are at a job. And I feel that anyone who wants to work should be allowed to work if you're willing to. Who wouldn't want that? I don't think Mitt Romney doesn't want that. I think that that's a blatant mischaracterization of him, period. I know that he's taken companies and he's done turnaround work within organizations that need that, and that's your job, is to generate that kind of profit. That's why he's been hired and put in the places he's been, and they've been successful. So as a country, like for you and guys like us, let's say, and again, I don't know your background, but we we need somebody that could behave as a turnaround man for us, whatever that might be. And if his job is to create jobs, then he, in fact, will do his job. Everyone needs to support their family and wants to have a good holiday, you know? He knows that.
But this is the thing you're not understanding.
What's that?
What makes you think Mitt Romney is going to try and do it for us instead of Goldman Sachs? Furthermore, with what we've discussed here tonight, him and his business associates breaking embargoes, illegally selling and trading with communist countries, even more so things that could even borderline on espionage, industrial espionage, carried out by Mitt Romney and his cohorts. You're saying it like it's a foregone conclusion that he's the nominee. I actually had a guy from my local Republican Party tell me, you know, you need to kind of chill out because I don't like Mitt either, but it's the horse we have to ride in on. And I titled my show this the other day, you don't ride a lame horse. You put it down. Mitt Romney is not going to be able to beat Barack Obama. Think about it. He's for the mandates. He's for the bailouts, for the stimulus, for the never-ending wars. What the hell can Mitt Romney say in a debate versus Barack Obama? What can Barack Obama say in a debate against Mitt Romney? We have got to the ultimate point where international financial interests have seized America, and they're about to finish us off. And if you don't understand that Mitt Romney isn't interested in saving this country, then I can't help you. I mean, have you been keeping up with the lawsuit that's going on? Or are you like most people who watch CNN and all those liars on TV? And
I don't watch TV really.
Okay, well that's a good thing.
You know, I read, and I think that I want to answer a question that you had asked that I think is a very smart, and it's like it kind of cuts through the crap, and it's the question that needs to be answered tonight. I think if any question needs to be answered, the one you just asked does. And that question was, in a debate, and I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing right now, so please correct me if I go off here, but you talked about, in a debate, you know, what could Mitt Romney say to Barack Obama, really, that, like, why is Mitt going to do better than Barack, you know, is what it kind of comes down to. And what's the answer to that question? Is that correct, basically, the question?
I'm not saying better. I'm not saying better. I'm saying different. I'm saying different. Okay. He has publicly stated that he supported a lot of Obama's stuff. Do you know exactly what the National Defense Authorization Act approves?
Yes, but I think to answer your question is that unfortunately, when it comes time to elections, we're not really looking at, like, it's not going to be in the words and in the contents, because we live in a society where people are going to look at presentation style and they're going to look at the suaveness. I mean, Ronald Reagan was an actor. You know, he didn't grow up as an economist. You know, these are front puppets that are going to basically engage and debate, and whoever's able to, you know, basically act in a way that's better will do better. But the issue beyond that is the fact that because people are hurting so badly in this country and jobs are getting laid off, they are going to look for the answer of, I will give you a job, regardless if that is possible or not possible to do. So with Obama, he's had 4 years to go ahead and work on this, regardless of, and he was handed a bad hand. I mean, we all know that he was. It didn't exactly get us in a good condition.
Look, this is the thing about Obama. He is doing the same thing he did the same thing that Mitt Romney is doing now. He's pulling the wool over the eyes of most people who aren't paying attention. Like, you're talking about the comeback of America, this, that, and other. This whole show has been outlining a woman's personal experience where Romney and his associates waged a campaign of physical and sexual, emotional abuse and assault, corruption in the courts, corruption in a business sense, treason, and betraying his country by dealing with foreign countries such as communist China while we had trade embargoes in it. I mean, you're like, the jobs. Do you understand? Mitt Romney and Barack Obama wants to put everybody in this country to work. They really do. They don't plan on paying us. They plan on putting us in FEMA centers. I really didn't want to get into too much of the what people would say conspiracy stuff tonight. But, hell, these aren't conspiracies anymore. You take what our government's passing now. You take what's in classified documents. You take what's in unclassified documents. And then you look at what the system we're being forced into, this world government system. You look at what the UN's planning. Did you know that they have it stated on the record that they want to reduce the world's population by 85%? How do you think Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, or anybody else who likes the UN would plan on doing that?
Well, first of all, I don't think they like the UN, and the UN is a whole other topic in itself.
They don't like the. Oh, wait. They don't like the UN. They don't. Listen. Did you not hear about what Obama and his military advisor said to Congress?
I did not say that they don't engage with the UN and play the politics game of the UN, but especially Republican parties, they do not look to the UN as the real source. They go there for posturing, but trust me, UN is not.
They go there
UN has
to
no
get international support.
Right. That's in essence what it is.
Let me finish the statement. They go there to get international support that will get the world community backing this small group in circumventing the will of Congress. I mean, did you not hear what the military advisors came to Congress and said? It's in our Constitution. If you're going to go to war, Congress has to approve it. You have to make a declaration of war with clear mission strategies, with a clear definition of victory. Obama, and Romney agrees with this, Romney's in line with this 100%, has the attitude of, when we want to go to war, we're going to go discuss it with the UN and then come let Congress know what we're doing. Sir, that is un-American. That is the death of America. Do you not realize, and this is, like I said, Mitt Romney supports it. Mitt Romney supported NDAA. He said on the record, I would have signed it and I felt it was appropriate. You know that in the past 2-3 months, there's been over, I'd say, probably about 500 million. Oh, no, Lord, each order was that much, but multiple government agencies have ordered high-performance hollow-tip bullets that are illegal to use in international war, under international law. Furthermore, $450 million of these rounds are being purchased by the National Weather Service. There's 800 empty prison camps in America. Are you seeing the bigger picture here? And Mitt Romney has said on record he's not going to do anything to stop it. Mitt Romney is beholden to the banks, just like Barack Obama is. Look at their campaign financiers.
Everyone who wants a job and wants to eat.
No, you're not hearing me. You need to look up the reason why we started this country. The threat that constantly hounded it after we got our independence. It is central banks. They literally conspire against the people. They have for decades. They tried the Federal Reserve scam 3 times before they actually got the Federal Reserve Charter. It was the first bank of the United States. When the people realized, hey, we're being screwed by greedy people, they revolted, and their charter wasn't renewed. We went through that 2 more times before they finally got wise enough to where people knew, hey, if we have a whatever bank of the United States, it's not going to be for the benefit of the United States. So they squashed it. So come 1913, they passed the Federal Reserve Act with only 3 people on the floor. At that time, you didn't have to have a quorum or nothing. Just who was there, and the majority vote got it. 3 people on the floor, just under 100 years ago, passed the Federal Reserve Act.
Well, what do you want to happen here? I mean, like, what's your goal here? Like, what do you want to see happen for sure? It's like, lay your perfect scenario down right now.
my perfect scenario, Republicans wake the hell up, figure out that they don't have a conservative as their candidate. Furthermore, they did not choose this candidate. Now, I'm a Ron Paul supporter, and I feel like he did a lot better than the media said, but I'm not going to go into about who should have won. All I know is whether it was Santorum, Gingrich, or Ron Paul, they were screwed, literally, by a criminal organization. I mean, have you seen the stuff about this lawsuit?
I haven't looked heavily into it, but thank God Santorum didn't get the nomination. That would have killed me.
I have a lot more issues with Santorum than I do Gingrich. You know, Paul's my man, but you need to look up one video. Look up the Louisiana Convention, State Convention. Ron Paul supporter, a good man, disabled combat veteran, got duly elected by an overwhelming majority to be the new state chairman. Immediately after, the outgoing state chairman, who was a heavy Romney supporter and campaign contributor, orders off-duty police to assault the man. It resulted in broken bones, dislocated hip. Are you also aware that Judge David Carter is going to rule, and he's already said on record that he believes that Richard Gilbert's application of the Voting Rights Act is applicable and just? Which means, you know how many delegates Mitt Romney has? 0. Mitt Romney has 0 delegates. We are not going to have a coronation in Tampa. We are going to have a debate. These issues about Mitt Romney and his corruption that goes back decades upon decades is coming out. It's already been coming out. It's going to continue to come out.
All right, so you're basically saying you want Ron Paul to run for president, in essence, and just get rid of Romney at this point. Is that the goal of your effort?
My goal is to have someone I can work with. If they go down to the convention in Tampa, have a real convention instead of a mafia-induced coronation, because at the end of the day, that almost every one of Mitt Romney's victories were gotten by voter fraud. People stole ballots from conventions and drove off with them, Romney campaign workers. They rigged election voting machines. All this is documented evidence. And
right.
you're still like, oh, well, Romney's this, Romney's that. He's a criminal. His whole campaign has been run in a criminal fashion. And I don't know how much of the show you caught before you called in, but his private life and business life has been run in a criminal fashion. Like, you realize that trading with the country while there's an embargo is a very serious offense. It's damn near treasonous.
Yeah, or getting your wiener sucked by a White House intern in the Oval Office is also pretty offensive too. But look how great our economy did then. You know, is this a principle that's based on
our economy did so great that the dollar continued to drop. You're not thinking of things in the proper perspective. You need to learn the history of the Federal Reserve. For the past 100 years, our money has dropped 95% in value. It was dropping while Clinton was in office. They just made that they had the bubble expanding then. That's all that was.
Right. I'm
well
aware of the Federal.
You're worried about the wiener.
I'm very well aware of the Federal Reserve and what it does. With all due respect to you, I don't really find the need to research it additionally right now because it's well known what it does. I know how it came about. I get it. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm kind of remiss to understand, or not to understand, but to truly get that you feel as if we're going to call him a criminal, let's say, okay, and suddenly the world is going to say, my God, he's a criminal. Look at this. Our candidate's a disaster. It's going to do nothing but I think hurt the right party from getting elected at this point, unless you feel as if
wait.
shouldn't.
You mean the party that's not going to win anyway, instead of doing something that's smart? Because I would have been one of those people. I would have stood my ground on principle, and I would have just went with a Sharpie and wrote Ron Paul's name in on my ballot. Period. But if Romney was seriously if Romney was serious about being a conservative, about actually being a Republican instead of labeling himself as one, he could have made a lot better pick than Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is a financial criminal too. I talked about this last night. He went to a meeting in 2008 with the Secretary of Treasury for Bush and Ben Bernanke, and he got insider information. And congressmen get this information. It's how they have to know the economic information. What they are not allowed to do is exactly what Paul Ryan did. In the same Mitt Romney, cut the corners, only for profit, damn all the rules type attitude. He left that meeting with information that was supposed to be classified, and he was not allowed by law to act on it. And he immediately pulled out tens of thousands of dollars from banks that he had just learned were fixing to collapse. Where did he take that money to reinvest it? Goldman Sachs. You're not seeing that they own us, and they only own us because people don't want to see it. I mean, do you really think that there isn't something deeply threatening our nation's existence when you have a bank like Goldman Sachs being the number one and number two bankroller for the two puppet, candidates? I mean, I don't see how you're not grasping that. That is the definition of a conspiracy by financial elite to buy the White House.
Well,
period.
The White House usually does get purchased as a general rule. I mean, if to be frank with you, the person I'd like to see run for president is not going to run for president.
Who would that be?
Somebody, Michael Bloomberg.
I don't like him because he did one thing that was a federal crime the other day. No, a couple of weeks ago, when he actually stood up as a elected official for the mayor of New York City and suggested that cops abandon their post and stop doing their job in an effort to scare us into willingly give up our Second Amendment rights. Once again, you're not seeing the big picture here. They are ending America. This is destruction by design, done at the hands of people like Mitt Romney and George Soros. I mean, George Soros is Obama's dude. And did I also not mention that George Soros actually owns a company in Spain that's going to count 90+% of the ballots this year? You're not seeing the bigger picture. It's rigged, and you're willing to just lay down and choose the lesser of two evils. Mitt Romney is evil. He is evil in everything he has done. And if you can't see that, I can't help you. But I'm going to go ahead and get off here.
I'm not asking for your help. I don't need your help. I just called him to give you my opinion. And this is what it is. You don't have to agree with it. This is the beauty of our country, is that we're allowed to disagree on who we feel would be a candidate or not a candidate. It's a part of why America is what it is. I think we do agree on certain things, but I think we diverge in other areas. So I respect your right to have an opinion. I respect you that you're articulating it, and that's the best I could kind of tell you, my friend. That's it. I'm not willing to accept things just to accept things, but I feel that right now, it's my personal take that I think out of the two presidents, it's not the lesser or the worst evil. I think that the Romney-Ryan combo can do a good job, and I think those are the ones that are positioned. If there is a last-minute write-in for some reason or some scandal breaks, then I'll be shocked, and I'll vote according to where I want to go. But I do truly feel that he will be able to be a better leader behind our country. There's always going to be banks that are controlling. There'll always be powerful people. There's always going to be something going on that we have no say over at the end of the day. And
no. See, that's where you are making a mistake. Because
I think he's
like you said, this is America, and we have a right to discuss and debate and disagree about things.
Of course.
For now, Mitt Romney, if he gets in the White House and has his way, we won't be able to. He is in full support of all the spying, all the internet censorship, and all this other shit, pardon my language, but that's what it is, shit, that shreds our Constitution. Mitt Romney wants to get rid of our Constitution. Mitt Romney...
But he can't do it, because that's why we have a balance of power. It's not going to happen.
What balance of power?
You can't just get rid of... You can't throw out the Constitution. You can't do it. How do you throw out the Constitution? Explain that.
Well, have you read the Patriot Act? You know you don't have a Fourth Amendment now, right? Thanks to the Patriot Act,
under certain
which might I add,
yeah.
I'm not going to get into the details of 9/11, but I'm just going to say this: that document was written 3 years before the event. Go figure. They had it on the shelf waiting. Fourth Amendment gone. Obama and Romney both want to get away with taking away our Second Amendment. Now, Romney can tout himself as a pro-gun candidate all he wants, but his voting record speaks volumes. You see what I'm saying? At the same time, our government is ordering the most lethal ammunition on the market in epic amounts. Do you not see that they are gearing up for a civil war against the American people? And we got Obama, Biden, and they're just stirring the tensions. We have Biden being a race baiter, goes to Virginia in a town that's 49% black in front of a crowd that was 100% black, and has the nerve, and I guess I'm kind of sticking up for Romney here in a way, but has the nerve to say they want to put y'all back in chains. And that's not exactly untrue, but it's a less exaggerated version of it. Yeah, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan wants to put black people back in chains, but they want to put white people in chains. They want to put Mexicans in chains. They want to put everybody into a serf-slave class. So does Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, why don't you want someone to stand on principle? You're willing to concede to someone who will trade with unfriendly countries when it's a danger to our country to do so in his personal business life. You're talking about someone who has no respect for our Constitution. Mitt Romney is one of those people who play and use and abuse that system of power and balance that you said that you brought up. Mitt Romney, did you not hear mine and Debbie's conversation from earlier? These people will get to judges. And as president with the authority to appoint judges, what do you think Mitt Romney's going to do? You got fooled with Obama. So did I. Obama coming there, I'm going to get out of Iraq day one. I'm going to end all Bush's torturing. I can do it with a stroke of pen. You know what Obama did with a stroke of a pen? Increased Bush's War Powers Act, increased the spying, increased the torture, and then this past New Year's Eve signed it into law that they can now do all that loving stuff to us, their own people. And Mitt Romney agrees with that law. I don't really like Newt Gingrich that much, but me and some Gingrich supporters got some serious common ground on this because Newt Gingrich said the NDAA was full of crap. Do you not understand it is a plan, it is authorization for them to kill you with no cause?
I understand what it is, but you don't just it's not applicable to just anyone that you just pop up and shoot in the head.
No, yes it is. Yes it is. Yes it is. Have you read the entire bill? I had this talk with somebody the other night. Have you read the entire bill?
No.
All right, see, I'm unemployed. All I got in life is trying to wake people up before they institute martial law and taking care of my family. That's all I got. So, yeah, I know it's a couple of 1,000-page document, but I read it. Also read the 2009 MIAC Strategic Anti-Militia Report. Are you a Christian?
I'm Jewish.
You're Jewish? All right, guess what? You're on the list, too. They have that strategic report written so vague, and the NDAA written so vague that they can apply it to anybody. Like you said, we have the right to debate about these things. Well,
Sure.
that right there, according to that government document, makes you a terrorist. Now what?
I don't really think that with Romney visiting Israel that they're looking at Jews in general as terrorists. I think that we're fortunate as a country to have Israel to control the Middle East, frankly, out there, and I think that's a lot of what goes on. There's an age-old saying that I'm going to completely botch before I say it, so forgive me. But, is the United States in charge of what goes on in the Middle East, or, does Israel kind of run the United States when it comes time to Middle East policy? And a lot of people will look and say that Israel does, because at the end of the day, they're the ones with the nuclear power, and they're the ones that can handle Arab advancement if it happens in a way that the U.S. doesn't like it, or as a sovereign nation themselves, they can go ahead and strike. But I appreciate the opportunity to call and speak to you. Again, I understand your concerns, but at this particular point, I am looking at Mitt as the candidate unless something happens that a new nominee comes out and is worth considering. Then, of course, I'd look at that. But I will vote Republican, and I think that we have a much, much better chance of having a better, more successful country. And as a final prayer, if I could just say this, and I'm sorry to be religious on your show. It's not intended.
Dude, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian myself.
So
we're all created by the same God. Go ahead.
That's correct, and we all talk to the same God, and I do, we both believe in the Old Testament, and I, God willing, I hope and pray that for you and your family that you get work, and that you're able to comfortably support your family, and for myself as well. I wish that, and for everyone in the world right now, I say a prayer for everyone who is sick and suffering and hurting and is a victim of such a bad recessive and depressive economy that we're in right now, because we're America. We all should be able to get out there and I guess support and live in a comfortable way. We're a civilized society, and let's just hope that happens, because if we're not employed and we're not making money, it's a tremendous psychological drain on all of us, and it's just not fair. We're good people, and we deserve an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, whatever that work might be, and let's keep that work legal at that. So, amen.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do thank you for your call.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the nice debate.
All right. I enjoyed it. You have a good one. Bless you.
Yes, sir. You too. God bless you too.
All righty. You still there, Debbie?
Yeah, I'm here. It was interesting deflection.
Yeah.
He's an obvious Mitt Romney supporter, and analyzing his discussion, he went right for the economy and jobs and completely deflected from the abuses and corruption the Romney family and the Romneys are involved in, which is really very typical. It felt like being in a Mormon bishop's office. They do the same thing. You go in with an issue, and they swing over in another. I think people have to be very careful when somebody comes in and they totally diss a serious allegation, which I have given, that these people came in, and even in his prayer, he could have cared less about that. His prayer was, better pray to get a job, and that's sort of like a Hitler stand, because Hitler did the same thing. All these abuses were going on, and people were to ignore them because their economy was bad. So, unfortunately, I was not impressed with his prayer or with him, but everyone is different, and I felt him to be a very callous caller.
Yeah.
But
I got it. Through about halfway through that he really wasn't receptive to hearing. He was just timing his rebuttal. And all the stuff I outlined is just. And God bless you for coming on the show tonight. What people need to understand is that people like this, whether it be Romney or Obama, they don't care about decency.
No, they don't.
They will run roughshod over us. They will abuse us and usurp every bit of power they can.
Yeah.
And it's just
and
terrible.
That's how the Romneys are. They will, and dealing with them as many years as I have, and also within the Mormon community, they are totally, absolutely callous to any abuse that they've done, and then they always go off on a topic where they feel might appeal to the general, to other people, and while dissing the really serious topic. So I feel it's unfortunate that he is, that way, but that's the way some people are. I'm not so sure Romney is going to do our American economy a world of good, and that he has his own agenda and the other people that he's
looking out for. And I don't think it's a general American public at all. But I was appreciative that you brought up the camps and the Romney torture series, because the Romney people are certainly behind enhanced tortures, and if you go to the torture page, you see where even some individual who was merely protesting Romney's use of a rodeo in the Olympics got roughed up and accused of being a terrorist. So all because they disagreed with the rodeo.
Yeah, also a rodeo. Yeah, and I have that video on the Mitt Romney torture series of a fellow who runs an organization called Shark, and he happens just to be in animal rights and against rodeos. And yeah, he was set up and besieged in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and pulled over, and FBI was there, and were pulling him over and accusing him of being a terrorist. Oh, because he disagreed.
Wow.
But that's you can see that YouTube, and that is on the Mitt Romney torture series.
I do, just real quick for the listeners, I do have that link down in the description, as well as two other links for two sites that Debbie has worked so hard on to bring this information to light of, to the public's eyes. We need to know this. They're trying to force us to have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
They backed us into a corner. It don't matter if it's the corner on this side of the room or that side of the room. It's a corner, and they got us backed into it.
Mm-hmm. It is. Like I said, there's things that need to be cleaned out of the Republican Party that has gotten very deeply entrenched, and you have to hand it to some of the Ron Paul people and the Newt Gingrich people that are seeming to step up and trying to confront it because it needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm listening to, and I want to give him a shout out real quick. I was listening to Sam Sanford's conservative blog radio here on Blog Talk Radio. He's a great guy from Florida, big time Newt supporter. He's doing Get Newt Back In It Money Bombs. Mm-hmm. And so I recommend everybody to go check out his next broadcast. He's really, now, if you're a belligerent Ron Paul supporter who just straight up is unwilling to speak civilly, he'll have some rough words for you. But as long as you go in there with the same objective of how can we work together to stop Mitt Romney, Sam Sanford's a pretty good guy to have that discussion with.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
And, yeah, I'm not familiar with him, but I did, I have heard his name on it. But you've given him the site, so it's something that, people can, certainly listen to.
He's as a Gingrich supporter, he's one of the people who's really supported Richard Gilbert in the lawsuit. If I'm recalling correctly, he's had Richard on his show a couple of times, and he's just overall one of those good people who's trying to fight for what's right, unlike the Romneys, who just try to fight against people because they enjoy it.
Yeah, well, they deflect a lot from the abuses that have been done and they have involvement in. And like I said, the sanction busting was a very serious issue, and I do not believe it was sponsored by the American government. I think some other countries were involved, but not the American government. Just a handful of American individuals were involved on business end where and I have to admit I was a little concerned about the caller coming in. I wasn't so sure if he was giving me a message like, don't talk about that embargo running, because I know what countries were involved. And so I'm hoping that was not his motive, because all they'll make me do is tell the whole thing as to what exactly was going on.
Well, that's something. If it comes to it, we'll have to do on another show, because I only have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, that's fine, and I haven't been keeping track, so I'll let you wrap up the show.
All righty, but it was great having you on, and I look forward to communicating with you again. And we've got a short time that we have left to beat Romney, but I feel like we're going to win. People can't ignore this level of evil, and if they do, then woe unto us.
Well, you have the convention to try to do a brokered convention and bring somebody else in.
And that would be incredible. I mean, even if it ends up not being Ron Paul, as long as they actually try to do what's good for America instead of what's good for his interests and his personal agenda, then I could get behind somebody other than Ron Paul. But, for right now, I'm supporting Ron Paul, because at the convention, as it stands right now, he's pretty much the guy in second place. He's the guy who can knock Romney off that pedestal. But we have to cooperate with other supporters of other candidates in order to make sure Romney's not nominated on that ballot. But I do thank you for coming on, Debbie, and I do hope to talk to you real soon.
Okay, you have a good evening.
All right,
Bye.
you too. All righty, guys, we were talking with Debbie, and she has a website, a couple of websites that deal with all the information that she knows from her personal experience with the Romney Family Crime Syndicate and the torture and abuse that they conduct on people. And the 3 links I got in there, and the show description is Mitt Romney, the Weather Vane Candidate, Mitt Romney's Torture Series, and Expose Mitt Romney. There's also links under those that are to my online outlets to where you can reach me, get in touch with me, get updates on what I got going on from my website. I want to real quick remind anybody, if you are going to Tampa for the convention, go to geniuscorner.com/team-Tampa and sign up to help me keep eyes and ears on the events down there. I would love to have a lot of people down there. I know I've got one lady who's actually going to be down there earlier than everybody else. She's on the platform steering committee, and she's a delegate, so I look forward to keeping in touch with her and a couple of other friends of mine who are going to be in Tampa. And I guess that's going to wrap it up. I'm going to try and get Debbie on here sometime soon again to discuss more of this stuff, because, y'all, we have to expose the real Mitt Romney. Y'all have a good night.
And I think it's time for Washington, Republican and Democrat.
I just think he ought to be honest with the American people and try to win as the real Mitt Romney.
Meet the real Mitt Romney.
Who is the real Romney?
No one really knows who the real Mitt Romney is.
He's an enigma, and he's a dad and a family man.
Who is the real Romney?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Can I have your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please? Will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? I repeat, will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? We're going to have a problem here.
Y'all act like you haven't seen a Mormon before. George, down on the floor. I'm not concerned about the very poor. Got it wrong. Sorry, that's not what I meant. I want every American to be in the top 1%. I'm really named Willard. That's my first name. I'm not looking for a colony on the moon, just for someone to blame. I like being able to fire people.
I'm Newt Gingrich.
You're fired.
I'm Rick Santorum, and I'm fired.
Boom, boom, boom.
Conservative women love Mitt Romney.
And I love cars. I love lakes. I'm running for office, for Pete's sake. With regards to abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, I firmly believe in my own singing voice. For purple mountains' majesty above the fruited.
We had the votes there to dominate, and they just locked the doors. They took us out, and they're fighting that battle now. They did that 4 years ago in Nevada, and a year or so later they admitted they did it, and they found the documents that showed that we had the votes to take over the convention, but they didn't want us to. So, yes, we're challenging the status quo of the entire country as well as the Republican Party, and people don't like to give up their power. But the momentum is very powerful. You know, I'm part of it, but I'm not it. It's much bigger than me, I'll tell you.
They can't stop our revolution now. The time has come. Their tyranny so plain to see. So we have joined as one.
Liberty or death.
The info war is raging and we won't stand idly by.
They can't stop
We're
us.
fighting for our freedom and we won't stop till we die.
I've been blinded by the light as well as by the darkness. Now that I'm awake, ready, set, let's start this debate for the fate of our nation and lives. Liberty is key to both left and right sides. Vote for the guy who's consistent and strong, the defender of freedom, right all along. His name, Ron Paul. This here's my endorsement. It may not mean much, but together we're flawless, unstoppable. Unless they rig the election, which they already have, and it's been getting hectic, but they can't stop a landslide, whatever they do. And he could win by a landslide if his message gets through. It's a message of hope for a peaceful tomorrow, and a message of joy for our world full of sorrow. So do all you can to restore the Constitution. Support Ron Paul. Join the revolution.
They can't stop our revolution now. The time has come. Their tyranny is so plain to see. So we have joined as one. The info war is raging and we won't be satisfied till every man, woman, and child is given back their rights. No matter what they take from us, they can't take our liberty. As long as the spirit of freedom lives on in you and me.
The world is woken up. This is revolution. We demand a peaceful reinstatement of our Constitution. Thank God the doc flew in to fix the sick nation. From death, war, and hyperinflation. He's got a lot of patience, but we haven't got the time. We gotta spread his message. The media's been lying. They keep saying he can't win, while he's the people's choice. If you read between the headlines.
The faces change, but they are just masks hiding the same big government establishment that's been in power now for a long time. Will you waste your vote just to change the mask of big government again? Or do you have the courage to vote for the face of liberty? Vote for the next president, Ron Paul.
Another question about electability. Do you have any, sir?
The establishment said the same thing about another presidential candidate.
I accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
Are you ready to prove them wrong again? Vote for the only true Republican, the next president of the United States, Ron Paul. Santa Rita Super PAC is... You didn't want this. They did it anyway. They took your money and gave it to their Wall Street friends.
I don't call it a bailout, I call it a rescue plan.
Ron Paul calls it stealing. Fearless in the face of corruption. Vote for the next president, Ron Paul. Polls show Ron Paul is the only candidate that can beat Barack Obama. Vote for a winner. Vote Ron Paul. Santa Rita Super PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Greetings, folks. T-Mont. Folks started coming to me, telling me about Gary Johnson and yada, yada, yada. I will not quit. What is it that folk just don't get about that? I will not quit. I am in this for Ron Paul. I will not quit. I will not stop. I will not alter my course. When November 6th comes, my ballot shall bear the name of Ron Paul, win, lose, or draw. Even if Ron Paul drops out, my ballot will bear the name of Ron Paul. It is about principle. It is about setting a standard. It is about not compromising. This is more than just about Ron Paul. For 30 years, this man has uncompromised himself. This man does not take money from corporations. Think not that he could not get up and sell a lie, that which he espouses but will not follow, and take money from the corporations, Goldman Sachs and the like, and get elected. Think not that he could not do that. But I love it. Why? Because it rings of truth. So please, enough with the suggestions about the third party candidate. I don't give a damn. I'm voting for one man. I am staying this course. And when this is over, whether he gets in the White House or not, those that stood with me, I know I can count on them and go into battle with them, because the next battle is to clean up the GOP. I will not quit.
Jeenyus Corner Live. Hello, friends. I'm Marshall Culpepper, host of the Jeenyus Corner Live. Right now, I'd like to ask you all for your support. As you may already know, I operate an alternative media website, geniuscorner.com. On this site, you can read from carefully selected news and political stories. I'd also urge you to check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/geniuscorner, as well as the Facebook page for this radio broadcast, facebook.com/geniuscornerlive. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/geniuscorner. Don't forget to join us on Jeenyus Corner Live, Monday through Friday at midnight Eastern. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, log on to geniuscorner.com/radio/guest. Then fill out the application, and you'll hear back from us as soon as we get your submission. Thank you all for tuning in.
This is something that is an intellectual fight. It's an intellectual. We have to know what we want. We have to be convinced that freedom works. We have to be convinced that we cannot depend on others, and we don't have any right to tell other people what to do. And if we did that, if we used that golden rule on interpersonal relationships, we ought to know how to use the golden rule on international relationships. If we don't want other countries doing anything to us, we shouldn't do it to them either.
I've been blinded by the light as well as by the darkness, but now that I'm awake, grab your lighters and let's spark this debate for the fate of our nation and lives. This stuff is important to both left and right sides, so vote for the guy who's been consistent and strong, the defender of freedom who's been right all along. His name is Ron Paul. This here's my endorsement. It may not mean much, but together we're flawless, unstoppable. Unless they rig the election, which they probably will, and shit's gonna get hectic, but they can't stop the landslide, whatever they do. And he can win by a landslide if his message gets through. It's a message of hope for a peaceful tomorrow, and a message of joy for our world full of sorrow. So do the right thing, please vote with your heart, and be a true hero.
Rosa Parks, Gandhi, they're the heroes of mine in practice of civil disobedience to try to get the burden of government on our backs, and that's why I'm the one that protects the individual blacks who are in the city who are so unfairly being treated and thrown in prison. That's the message that needs to be heard, and I'd appreciate somebody helping bring that up rather than nitpicking over something done many years ago. I did not.
Ron Paul, victory coming soon. If you stand with the man who's been fighting for you, he's been called an old loon just for telling the truth. He's been blacked out, smeared, ridiculed on the news, but the establishment's scared. Just look at the proof. Ron Paul's the only candidate for the youth. And now that they're dying, it's even more vital. His sayings are scripture like here in the Bible. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not speak if thou art not real. Thou shalt not torture, thou shalt not tax the wage of a man who's been breaking his back. Thou shalt not break a constitutional oath. Thou shalt not skew the results of a vote. Thou shalt not not go invading a nation without Congress's vote and a clear mission statement.
We need a strong national defense, and we need to only go to war with a declaration of war.
But if our national security is threatened, the evidence is presented to the Congress, I'd ask them for a declaration of war. But then it would be all out. I mean, I would know exactly who the war is declared against and fight the war, win it, and get it over with. But it would be much more precise.
The world's been waking up. We need a revolution. We'd like a peaceful change and to keep our Constitution. That's why the doctor flew in to fix the sick nation. From death, war, and hyperinflation. We've got a lot of patience, but we haven't got the time. We gotta spread this message because the media's been lying. They keep saying he can't win. While he's the people's choice. If you read between the headlines, that means we don't have a voice. Damn! Is this the land of the free still where the one we elect really speaks for the people? Man, or are we just sheeple who go with the flow and don't see their evil? I really don't know if America can make it, but I really do hope we the people will awaken before it's too late. Please answer the call. Elect for president the good Dr. Ron Paul.
This idea that you have to give up so much of your liberties to be safe, that's nonsense. You don't have to give up any liberties to be safe. Don't have true liberty, the wealth cannot last. It's been decades of bad economic ideas and bad foreign policy and bad monetary policy. That's where the problem is.
He's a man with a plan for the country he loves. Only he understands enough is enough. Enough for the taxes, enough for the spending, enough for these wars that appear never ending. Unless we elect us a principal person who'll do what it takes to reverse this curse and end the Fed. We're in the red and end these wars so we end up dead. Ron Paul 2012.
www.geniuscorner.com